Hello and welcome to Mindset Mondays with DTK. This is episode 59 of an ongoing project of weekly live Facebook broadcast or conversations that are designed for folks with a growth mindset or those who'd like to develop one, to play with new ideas and new concepts and to try on new mindsets. So real quick before we begin, go ahead and click share underneath this video and invite your friends, your community, your colleagues to join the conversation. So I love a conversation about the concept of success versus failure. And this is an opportunity for us to play with it. Yes, I could have gone with the the quote from Yoda, there is do or do not, there is no try, or there is no try, there is do or do not. But instead, I've picked Sara Blakely. Failure is not trying. Don't be afraid to fail. And I picked this one because I think the fear of failure, there's a debate as to whether the fear of failure versus the fear of success is more debilitating. We'll play with that in a minute. But that playground of being afraid to fail. My eldest child got a small tattoo right here on their wrist that's a very small X. And for them, it's a reminder that not to let the fear of striking out keep you from stepping up to the plate. It's when you're keeping score in baseball, an X signifies a strike. And one of my kids' favorite movies was A League of Their Own. And Gina Davis's character was leaving the Women's Professional Baseball League. And when asked by her coach, she said it's because it got too hard. And Tom Hanks, who was playing her coach, said, yeah, but the hard is what makes it good. And my kids have always taken that lesson of the learning in the fits and starts, the failures, the successes and failures, and the balance. The learning is the primary currency. And when we let the fear of striking out keep us from stepping up to the plate, we don't experience and we don't learn. We step back, and the only failure is missing the opportunity. The only failure is not trying. And that's why I think Sara Blakely's quote captures it so perfectly. It comes from the story that Sara tells on the stage quite often. Sara Blakely is the founder and CEO of Spanx. And the story that she tells is growing up at the table at dinner every night, she and her siblings were asked by their father every night, what did you fail at today? They celebrated failure because that's where the learning is. Look, don't get me wrong, I like success. I like winning. It feels good. And I could survive on an unending diet of success. Yeah, that would feel good. But I think it's the wrong currency. Success feels good, but it teaches us very little compared to what we learn from the real currency. The real currency is learning, which we get more of from failure. Failure means you're trying. Organizations that I work with and look inside of, and I hear them say that they reward and celebrate and are all about being creative. Fine. If they're really about being creative and pushing their folks to be creative and more innovative, and then they punish failure, that's back in order to be innovative and be creative. It's inevitable that most of the things you try fail. So when you punish failure, but say that you're an innovative firm, then your actions are not in alignment with your statements. Companies that are truly innovative and celebrate innovation and creativity celebrate failure. You dive into the failure and learn from it. There are so many times where I have stepped back from opportunity because of the potential failure. Convinced myself that failure was inevitable and that failing at an activity meant that I was a failure, right? See, there's the trick. Failing at something doesn't make one a failure. You simply failed at doing whatever that was. I was so wrapped up in the fact that if I failed at something, I was a failure, that I stayed engaged with things too long, or relationships too long, or activities too long, or projects too long. And instead of diving into the learning, I avoided the failure at all costs. There were so many things I didn't start because I knew they were going to be a failure. Instead of being objective and unpacking what happened and looking what worked and what didn't work, looking for the learning, testing decisions, looking at the outcomes, mining for insights, digging for the learning, I chose to skip over it and move on, run away from that because it meant that I was digging into a failure. I hate the visceral feeling that comes from failure. I do. It sucks. Because the first reaction I still get is the shame, right? I still work daily at overcoming the shame that comes from it and the embarrassment. I have to consciously reframe the failure as an opportunity for learning so that I can dive into it. I just feel gross until I reframe it and I can look at, okay, yes, this didn't work. But learning and the learning helps me do the things that I do next better, cleaner, sharper, more focused, more in alignment with who I am. Me says humility is involved in that learning process. She said, great quote today. Thank you, Mish. Yeah, the humility, the willingness to say, who, not perfect. Right. And even in every success, being willing to celebrate the success and look at what worked and what didn't work. One of the things that Larry Hart, my Vista chair, did with our group was instead of the flavor that he used for our post-mortems were always a pluses and deltas. What were the pluses? What were the things that went well that we want to do more of? And what are the deltas? What are the things that we want to see different? It really was, that simple tweak was really powerful. For me, it allowed me to be much more objective with what had happened and digging into what happened without the judgment, more with observation and assessment. When I waste energy, or when any of us wastes the energy of avoiding the failure, stepping back from it, right? We end up playing not to lose instead of playing to win. There's a very different energy. If we're avoiding the failure, right? Hiding away from the failure instead of leaning into what's working. There's a very different energy in playing to win instead of playing not to lose. And as I say that, what comes up is that's another currency. Putting myself in positions and creating opportunities where I'm playing to win instead of playing not to lose. Whoa, that is such a powerful energy. Working with people that are motivated to create the change in their lives gives me an opportunity to win. I've worked with folk that are still in the stage of terror, the sheer scarcity-based terror of getting out of what they're doing and starting something new. And although I've done work in that space and I enjoy, and to an extent, that process because I still love the transformative piece. I had so much emotion wrapped up in being in that scarcity place. It's harder for me to self-manage. So working in that early stage wantrepreneur place is harder for me, and it feels more like playing not to lose. Working with successful entrepreneurs that are trying to make something that's good, fantastic, trying to move from good to great, trying to expand the footprint of impact, trying to get better at being who they are at their core. That for me has an energy of playing to win. That is a remarkable coaching space. That's the sandbox I love getting into. And what's clear is that playing to win energy versus playing not to lose. Got a couple of CTI faculty folk here in Atlanta that built a program called Playing to Win. And it was all about shifting that energy, identifying where you're playing not to lose instead of playing to win, and moving into the work of playing to win. It's more than, it's not to say that we don't still look at experience failures and look at failures and learn from them. It's how to create the conditions that increase the chances of you living and leading at your best. And notice I'm even stepping back, right? There's a natural tendency to step away from fear, to step away from failure. We're wired that way. And yet, where's the learning? Rich Litvin talks about the difference between problem solving, problem diving, and problem finding. And I'll play with that more later. But what I love about the idea of the difference between problem solving and problem finding is that the problem finding, the playground there is the pre-mortem. Instead of looking at what's happened as in a post-mortem and unpacking it, the pre-mortem is a fantastic concept, looking at what could go wrong. What are the behaviors that derail you? What are the behaviors that lead to your success? Unpacking both sides of the opportunity, looking at what are your strengths? What are your superpowers? And what's the dark side of those superpowers? What are the dangers that are being faced? And what are the opportunities in those dangers that are faced? Looking at the landscape and unpacking it objectively. What a remarkable way to walk into a launch, a new company, a new experience. You're diving into the learning before you dive into the experience. So whatever comes out of this, whatever success or failure, there's learning at the beginning, there's learning in the middle, there's learning along the way, there's learning at the end. And so when we look at, again, Sarah's quote, the only failure is not trying. Because in not trying, you circumvent all of the learning. When we're afraid of failure, we shortchange ourselves. We cheat ourselves out of fantastic learning and fantastic growth. So what are you avoiding? What failure are you avoiding? What's happening in your world that you're stepping back from? What are you not trying? The opportunity for every one of us for this week between now and our next Mindset Monday is to play with. Just notice, dig in and notice. What failure are you avoiding? What are you choosing not to try? What learning is available to you? So come to facebook.com/groups/Mindset Monday. Join the conversation. This is such a rich playground, playing with success and failure. It's the essence of who we are, striving for something new or choosing through fear to step back. Fear is a primal emotion. It's the reptilian brain that all vertebrates share: fight, flight, freeze. These are the fear-based visceral reactions. How do we reclaim our brain and step out of the fear and step into possibility? What's possible in your world when you step out of fear and step into possibility? So between now and next week, what mindset will you choose?